He said, be like, and this is the example of someone being inside their house, as if you're looking at it, and between you and that substance is a glass, or a wall and a barrier, and you're looking out at it. Like someone who's in their apartment, or someone inside their home, and they look out into the street, and it could be raining, and you could see people getting soiled from the rain and soiled from the mud, but that person is safe on the inside. So when you see the doubts coming, act in that way. And don't let it absorb into your heart, into your mind. There was a hadith, when I was first learning in Imam al-Nawawi's 40 hadith, in which the narrator says that the Prophet ﷺ said, and then he put in a statement there, he said, وَهُوَ الصَّادِقُ الْمَصْدُوقُ, and he is a sadiq, the truthful one, al-masduq, the one whom the people have accepted as the truthful one, a sadiq al-masduq. And then he began the hadith about the creation of a human being, 40 days like this, 40 days like that. And I thought, subhanAllah, growing up in North America, we always took the statements of the Prophet ﷺ like any other human being statement. That it's, why did he say this? And what's the benefit of this? And what's the hikmah and wisdom behind that? Even though that the Prophet ﷺ is not like any other human being. If he said it, then what he said is the truth. And that's not a concept that we understand. But we need to understand that. And so in these verses you'll see here, and it's very important to understand that when they disbelieved, and like I said, they used the word kadhaba comes in these verses. They knew the Prophet ﷺ was telling the truth. And they didn't accept the truth because of their arrogance and their tyranny and their love for this dunya. And so in the refutations in these Meccan surahs, the refutation doesn't come like in detail. It doesn't come with arguments and so on. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala testifies and then says that this is the truth. And that actually shows you the izzah, the power and the nobility of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that it doesn't argue with people who weren't going to accept the truth in the first place. And Allah Azza wa Jalla knows them. And we don't live in a society like that. In a society that we live in, for example, there's the argumentation, the debate, and there's a different da'wah approach. This would be ayat, for example, if you were in maybe Saudi Arabia, and there were some Arab polytheists, like mushrikeen, in Saudi Arabia that worship Buddha, for example, in Mecca al-Mukarramah. These are the kind of verses, and they just didn't want to accept it because they hated all Muslims in this, and they knew the truth, that kind of belief isn't coming from conviction, but it's coming from arrogance. And these verses are revealed for people like that. So keep it in mind, inshallah. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, فَلَا أُقْسِمُ بِالْخُنَّسِ. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala begins the testification. Al-Khunnas is the thing that recedes, which are the planets or the stars. And you'll see in Surat Al-Waswas Al-Khannas, in Surat Al-Nas, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala describes the shaitan as Khannas, the one who recedes. And he recedes when the person says, أَعُوذُ بِاللَّهِ مِنَ الشَّيْطَانِ الرَّجِيمِ, and then he goes away. And here Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is saying, فَلَا أُقْسِمُ بِالْخُنَّسِ, which are the planets or the stars. They come out, their light comes out in the night, and then they recede in the daytime. Al-Jawar al-Kunnas, the swiftly moving planets. وَاللَّيْلِ إِذَا عَسْعَسْ, and the night as it departs. And actually, the as'as is the night as it covers in its darkness, and it's moving, the moving darkness. وَالصُّبْحِ إِذَا تَنَفَّسْ, and the morning as it breathes. Actually, a person reminded me yesterday, actually, or the day before, that Brother Safi gave a khutbah about, there was like 21 questions that a person was asked. Anybody hear that khutbah? One of the questions that they asked this Muslim scholar was, what breathes but has no soul? And he said, the morning. And this was the verse he was quoting, وَالصُّبْحِ إِذَا تَنَفَّسْ, and the morning as it breathes. And it's very powerful words that are coming, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and I'm going to be speaking a little bit more about the testifications. But the main thing that we learn from the testification is that the thing that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is testifying by, does anybody deny it? Does anybody deny the planets? Does anybody deny the sun? Does anybody deny the night, the morning? The same way and the same conviction that we have for those things, our conviction has to be the same way for what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is testifying to, the issue. And like I said, we'll speak a little bit more about it as the verses come in. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, فَلَا أُقْسِمُ بِالْخُنَّسِ الْجَوَارِ الْكُنَّسِ وَاللَّيْلِ إِذَا عَسْعَسَ وَالصُّبْحِ إِذَا تَنَفَّسَ إِنَّهُ لَقَوْلُ رَسُولٍ كَرِيمٍ. And here's the testification. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is saying that it is the statement of a Rasul Kareem, which is Jibreel alayhi salam. Then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala goes on to speak about how truthful Jibreel alayhi salam is and who is Jibreel alayhi salam. And in fact, a lot of Muslims, we hear Angel Jibreel, but there's much more to him. And he is the archangel or the Amir of all the other angels. Alayhi salam. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, you'll see in those verses, ذِي قُوَّةٍ, one of power, عِنْدَ ذِي الْعَرْشِ مَكِينٍ, with Allah, the Lord of the throne, مُطَاعٍ ثَمَّ, that He's obeyed over there, meaning near that throne, and the angels of the heavens, Ameen, and He's trustworthy. And then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَمَا صَاحِبُكُمْ بِمَجْنُونَ. So there's 5 characteristics of Jibreel alayhi salam that we see here. Number 1, that he's powerful. He's immensely powerful, alayhi salam. Number 2 is that he is of high status. And number 3 is actually of noble status. And those are 2 different ones, because a person can be of high status, but not necessarily noble status. So he is of high status, and number 3, of noble status. Number 4, he is of the highest trust. Ameen, of the highest trust. Muta'in thamma ameen. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala also says that he's muta', that all the angels obey the commandments of Jibreel alayhi salam. When he orders them out to do things, they listen to Jibreel alayhi salam. Muta'in. And then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in verse 22, وَمَا صَاحِبُكُمْ بِمَجْنُونَ. And your sahib, your companion, is not a madman. And here Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala chose to say, sahibukum, your friend, your companion, the one that you know. If someone came in late, and then I said, Aina sahibuka, where is your friend? And you'd say, who? And then I say, the person, that was sitting over there. And you may say, well, I don't really know that person. That's not necessarily my sahib. Right? I know he was in the class and whatnot, but he's not my sahib. He's not my friend, my companion that I walk with everywhere. And so Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala chose to characterize the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam as sahibukum bi majnoon. And there's no detailed argumentation of it. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is saying that he's not a madman, because they knew he wasn't. They knew he wasn't crazy. He said, وَمَا صَاحِبُكُمْ بِمَجْنُونَ. Then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in those next verses is speaking about how the revelation, وَلَقَدْ رَآهُ بِالْأُفُقِ الْمُبِينَ, which is verse 23, وَمَا هُوَ عَلَى الْغَيْبِ بِضَنِينَ. In verse 24, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is saying that the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, why is he giving this message of Islam? He's actually being harmed by it. And he's not getting benefit out of it, technically, from any human being. And you'll see a lot of business websites, they're always trying to get money off of the people and stuff. But then when there's like an Islamic website, you see things are for free. Because they're doing it for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is saying, وَمَا هُوَ عَلَى الْغَيْبِ بِضَنِينَ, that he's not holding anything back. And he's actually giving you this message which shows the wretchedness of them disbelieving in the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. وَمَا هُوَ بِقَوْلِ شَيْطَانِ الرَّجِيمِ. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is saying, and it is not the statement of a rejected devil. And this was the tradition of the Arabs, that when someone was really good in poetry, they would say that he has a devil that's inspiring him. They'll say, his devil is, really good, and he's helping him out.